I thought I'd do a little video on some of the pitfalls of buying stuff from China. You have sellers that sell direct from China, such as the most common one is AliExpress, there is Banggood, and several others. And in fact, some of those sellers are also present on eBay and even Amazon. But when you buy it from Amazon, you usually have a little bit more protection because you have Amazon in between and you can complain to Amazon and maybe get refunds and things like that. Now, here's one example. I've been looking for a little camera that is not too expensive for making some videos for YouTube, little close-ups and so on for components and what have you. I have a little camera similar to that, but it's really cheap and it hangs sometimes, and then I have to restart OBS Studio and so on, and that's not a very good thing. So I've been looking for a better one, and I saw this thing here. Webcam, 8 megapixels, supposedly has a Sony CMOS chip in it, and if you look at the specifications, they say, hey, it is great for all sorts of uses, has video conference, online teaching, webcasting, and so on. So I already have a few lenses, so I bought the one with the 4mm lens on it, and when I got it, it had terrible distortion in the picture. So let's have a look if I can bring that up here. For instance, here you'll see the fisheye effect on the edges here. It is like a bubble, and even close up, like that's a rectangular piece of paper. And also the contrast was very poor, as you can see. That's about as good as it got. So I went and complained about that, and they put in a dispute and say, okay, I want to have this thing refunded, and I offered to return it. But the result was that they offered me $15 refund, which, of course, a $54 item is not good enough. So then they sent me a thing saying, okay, we agree this thing is not very good, just return the item. So you get an address, and they ask you to put in whether you sent it via UPS, FedEx, or postal service, and they want you to give your tracking number. It says return shipping would be paid by the seller. Well, great, so where's the return label? There is none. So then I followed it up, and they said, oh yeah, you got to pay for it. And of course I went to UPS, and they want $40 to return this thing, a $50 item. And and when you return it, you send us the receipt, and we will give you a coupon that you can use on AliExpress. They won't refund the shipping. So even if they give me $50 back for the camera, then I'll get a coupon for $40 and I'll only get $10 back. So I don't find that acceptable. Now, when you buy from AliExpress, therefore, what you want to do is to look for any item that says free return. That does work. I've used that in the past. I've been looking for a camera, and none of these cameras that they sell on AliExpress seem to be particularly good. They all have bugs in them. The lenses may not work. I had another one where the lens actually was even worse than the one I just showed. It had just a spot in the middle, and there was no picture at all around the edges. It was like looking through a little round tube. And luckily that was from this company, Phone Fix here, that they have free return, so I was able to return it. And That is one of the pitfalls with AliExpress. So if you buy anything that is worth any money, you better either check that the seller is a company that you can trust, or that it has this free return logo on the website. So sometimes you don't have a choice. If you need a particular item to do something like an electronic load over here, a spot welder for lithium ion cells, power supply, and so on, these things tend to be half, maybe to a third of the price from what you'd have to pay if you got a brand name item from a US supplier. And for hobby use, that's not really practical. You don't want to pay, $500 for a power supply, or $400, or whatever they might cost. And so this thing over here, this is like a spot welder. It works okay. It's not wonderful, but it is good enough for my uses anyway. This little electronic load is actually very good. I like it. It does the job that I need it to do for testing power supplies, buck regulators, and amplifiers sometimes. This power supply I'm very happy with. It's very accurate and it has a good output. This soldering station, I've got some videos on it. I really like it. It does a good job, and it is every bit as good as some of those ultra expensive brand name ones as far as I'm concerned. These little T12 stations that I built over here from kits, they work also good for me. And this LCR meter I'm happy with. It also does a good job. This digital multimeter, this function waveform generator, they were all cheap. They do work, but they are not wonderful. This thing is very slow in response. And some of these items over here too, they were cheap. This multimeter works good for me, but it has limitations. Some of the higher value capacitors I can't read and so on. This thing too has some limitations, and when you want a waveform that's of very low amplitude, it has a lot of noise, but they work okay for my uses. So that's kind of what it is like. Sometimes you have no choice, and you can do some research on these things and see other people that might have them, or get some feedback on them, and they work okay. Most of the problem lies with some items that are between, I don't know, $50 to $100. There's no reviews on them, and these little cameras and some other smaller items for testing and so on, they don't, you don't know what you get. So you have to be able to take a risk on those, and if they don't have free returns, then you're probably stuck with it. So that's what you got to be aware of. So I've actually come to the situation now that I don't buy these kind of things anymore from AliExpress. I look for them on Amazon.com, and they often have the same thing. And it is more expensive, usually $20 more maybe for a camera, but it is probably worth it because for peace of mind, because if you don't like it, you can return it and stuff like that. And as I said, unless you do have a free return on there. So I thought I would just do a little video to have a heads up there. Also, I wanted to mention all of the sellers have this 75-day buyer protection money back guarantee. It is not true. There is no money back guarantee. As you can just see, I have not had any response from this thing at all. It just, as I said, I have to pay for the return shipping, which is almost as high as the price of the item, because I don't have an account with UPS, or so I don't get a very good deal. And it makes it impossible to return. Now they have this information here, money back guarantee, and it all sounds very nice, but as you can see, it does not work. Now the free return thing has worked for me in the past, but as I said, then you got to see if there is free return on the website. And as I said, when it comes to components, like for instance here, I bought some of these LM2596s because I wanted to experiment with designing my own little buck regulators, and I'm doing some videos on that. But these guys over here, they have the ones that I received, they got a little symbol on there that I don't recognize. I don't know who made them, and I found that when you buy components from China, they usually are either the sellers, they have seconds, like they may be out of spec. I've had voltage regulators that were supposed to work up to 20 volts, like an LM317 or something like that, and they all blew up over like 15 volts. Obviously maybe they were tested and failed, and then they got sold off cheap to somebody, and then they sell them on like eBay and AliExpress and so on. Now, if you want to use them at 5 volts, then or 12 volts, they probably work just fine. But if you want to use them at the close to their maximum, they may not be fine. And the same with these guys here. I don't know what the deal is, but I've measured them at 52 kilohertz output, and according to the data sheets, I think there was supposed to be 150 kilohertz. Now they do work, but again, they would have limitations, and they won't have the same output that you would expect from the data sheet. So that's another thing to look out for. Obviously, these kind of things, if you want good ones, then you'll buy them from DigiKey or Mouser or one of those US based. They have brand name items, and in fact I have bought some of those, and in my future video that I'm going to be put up there for these buck regulators, I'll be testing them out and seeing what the differences are. Anyway, I thought I would just put up a little video for this about Chinese stuff, just as a heads up, in case you haven't bought anything through them. And I just worry sometimes, like I'll say, oh well, you can buy these through AliExpress or something, but you got to be careful. Only fair to mention that, I thought. Okay, I'll see you guys later.